Hello, listeners. Happy Friday, and welcome back to Frontline Fridays, brought to you by YOOBIC. I'm Ron Thurston, the host and the voice of the Retail in America podcast, and the co-founder of the upcoming retail recruiting platform called Aussie. On this podcast, we sit down with leaders who are inspiring excellence on their frontline teams and learn what they do differently. And we are today in episode 3 with an incredible woman who I've had the pleasure of getting to know over the last few weeks, and that is Adamika Jaya Owens. So I'm going to do a quick intro. So she's a highly accomplished professional with over 25 years of experience in field visual merchandising, most recently serving as the Senior Director of Visual Merchandising for Floor and Decor. And Jaya has consistently demonstrated exceptional expertise and leadership in this very dynamic industry, and certainly in her role. Throughout her career with high-profile companies such as Bloomingdale's, Forever 21, and Victoria's Secret, Jaya has been responsible for developing and implementing innovative visual merchandising strategies that effectively enhance the brand image and, of course, drive sales. And I wanted to say, when I wrote Retail Pride, one of the big chunks of it are the top 10 reasons why we love working in retail, all, of course, my own opinion. But number 4 is visual merchandising matters more than ever. And as we sit 3 years past when Retail Pride came out, I can confidently say, if I were going to write today why visual merchandising matters more than ever, it's absolutely still true. So it's a joy to welcome Jaya to Frontline Fridays. Hi, Jaya.
Hello there. Thank you. I so appreciate being here. This is awesome. This is exciting.
I'm so glad. I think when you and I initially met, this idea of what does a career from the front line and the importance of visual merchandising play, in our retail landscape today. And I wanted to kind of dig in with you about how visual merchandising and things like store design and all of it really influences the overall customer experience. And so if you could spend a few moments with us sharing, how do you see visual merchandising influencing a brand's customer experience?
I think that visual merchandising is at the core of the customer's experience because oftentimes visual merchandising is seen as making the store look pretty. And in fact, visual merchandising does so much more than that. It really sets the tone for the customer. Visual merchandising teams have to work with everyone from safety to construction to store operations. So really creating that store environment that customers come into that really helps them make a decision, increase sales, because it's so much more experiential than just being online. It's really engaging and embedding yourself within the brand when you step into a store and experience the visual merchandising. It sets the tone.
Agree. It absolutely sets the tone. And I think when you think about the frontline teams that you've led, inspired, and as you've become a successful professional in visual merchandising, how have you seen the frontline really become engaged and learn about retail through visual merchandising?
What's so interesting is oftentimes the people that are in the front line, they come in as sales associates. And what you first experience is a store's physical the physical space. So when a customer or a sales associate comes in, they want to work for the brand, what it looks like to get them inspired for the brand is the physical space. So getting them to understand the way that the fixtures are created, the signage, it really does embed them into the actual brand and gets them excited to work for the company. And honestly, that's where it starts at, was the visual merchandising. That's the first thing that the customers or even our sales associates experience is the physical setup. So I think it all starts from there. There's so many people who choose to work for a company because you love the Gap, so you want to work for the Gap, right? You love when you walk into their stores, the way that their mannequins look, the way that they're dressed, and that's why you want to work for their company. Is honestly, it's the visual merchandising.
Right.
In my
Agreed.
opinion. Yeah.
I would support that opinion. And when you think about this idea that it's everyone's responsibility. So I'm coming in, I'm new to retail, maybe my first or second job. I'm a part-time associate and I fall in love with this. So brands that you've led the visual merchandising teams for around Victoria's Secret or Forever 21, it's so immersive. It's so complex. It's so, it actually requires everyone to be involved. How
Absolutely.
did you inspire that? Because, it's hard work,
Mhm.
and not some people may not be their strength. So tell us your secret to making
I
that
think
happen.
the very first thing that I do when I join any organization is get to know not only the leaders in every other department, but the people that are in the stores. It's incredibly important, even if you're based at the corporate office, the store support center, for you to spend the majority of your time, in my opinion, in the stores. That's where the rubber meets the road. That's where the magic is at, as we often say. And so I think it's really about speaking to the sales associates, getting them excited about the brand. What are the features and the benefits? And then once you have their buy-in, then the store starts to reflect that. It's that daily understanding that the store, this is our home, and it's all of our collective responsibility, from everyone from the store manager down to the person who cleans the fitting rooms. And what does it take to get them engaged? It's having the conversation, getting them excited about the new product coming in, the new fixtures, the new signs, so that they understand how it benefits them. I think that's where it starts at, is really making sure that you open yourself up and you extend yourselves to all the departments. I see visual merchandising as sitting as in the center, that cross section between all departments, bringing everyone together.
Hmm. And that includes departments that maybe the part-time associate doesn't see, which could include buying, planning,
Yeah.
store design, in bigger conversations that influence ultimately the assortment, the inventory levels, the turnover of backstock. All of that is
Absolutely.
also, it's an education in running a business. And so I think
Yes.
that's where I wanted to go with you. It's, this
Yes.
is, you started this by saying it's not about making it pretty. And I
Right.
think visual merchandising is actually teaching business acumen. It's teaching this
Absolutely.
idea of how do we run a multi-million-dollar retail business that,
Mhm.
when visual merchandising matters more than ever, but that also, for it to be successful, requires every department. So tell us some
Absolutely.
of that experience you've had.
Typically, I find that really it's important to start with store operations, making sure that they understand that we're coming in as that 1-2 punch. So store operations, you're overseeing budgets and schedules and really like the operation side of the business. And then what does that look like to marry with the creative side of the business, right? So it's the marketing departments, it's visual merchandising, it's actually being in the store, talking to the store manager, making sure that they understand the newest fixtures, the newest directives coming through, making sure they understand. And again, really getting their buy-in, I think, is important, because if you're only speaking to the people who automatically get what you're speaking to, if you're only speaking to marketing, for example, you're really missing the full advantage of that you can, because it is really, everyone has to be in this together. So it's about speaking to construction, making sure they understand the vision that you have, also understanding their constraints, right? So you're making sure that you come to compromise. I think it's really about those conversations happening at the very beginning, whenever you start a project or whenever you start a new job. It's really important to make sure that you're engaging with all departments, because to your point, it really is a collective business decision that we all buy into in order to increase sales.
Right, right. And when you think about the careers
Mm.
that are inspired, so yours is such this incredible example. And I've worked with other leaders in visual merchandising who have a skill set that's very, very, very unique, because it's so creative, yet it's so business sense at the
Yes.
same time. And
Yep.
so as you've probably inspired and brought many people through from the front lines to a career in visual merchandising. Is there
Yes.
anyone that you would like to shout out?
Actually, I would love to shout out Amanda Featherstone. This is a young lady that to this day, I haven't spoken to probably in the last 3 years, but we originally worked together at Forever 21. At the time, she came in and she was honestly like a store sales associate who was promoted to the new store opening team. And then I was able to continue to work with her. I learned a ton from her. And then I was able to promote her to a manager. And then we found ourselves not just in the US, but traveling internationally. And there were times in which that she was super nervous about being international by herself, because oftentimes we would take a flight by ourselves, stay in, for example, Japan for 3 weeks. So what does that look like to provide that support to Amanda so that she feels empowered and encouraged to not only represent herself, but honestly, when you're going into the international market and you're a US based company, that one person is representing the entire company. So Amanda was representing all of Forever 21 to these particular associates and, in Korea or Japan, where she was going to open the new store. So that support that I was able to provide to her in the background that empowered her to be that leader that she always was, but to stand up and to own it. And the time that I was able to work with her, she went again from a store associate to a manager. She's since gone on to get promoted at other companies. She's gotten married. She's started her own business. So I'm incredibly proud to say that that's one story that I learned a lot from her. I take pride in thinking that we learned a lot from one another, and she continues to do very well. And again, not just in her career, but in life. And that's what matters most to me, is really developing and pouring into people.
Beautiful. And who did that for you when you were just getting started?
There was a gentleman by the name of Ken Hansen that is one of my absolute favorite bosses of all time. And it was because he was a true leader. He didn't worry at all about the title of my boss. Oh my goodness, I am so sorry.
Okay.
I do apologize. It was okay. He poured into me and as a person, and we still get in contact to this day. He's gone on to start his own business. He no longer works for the company that he and I both worked with, which was Sport Chalet at the time. But he made a point to really push me, to challenge me, to learn new skills like in design. But then at the same time, he also made me feel that I wasn't alone. He let me know that he was going to coach and develop me, and that I didn't have to feel nervous about not knowing something, that I could admit that I don't know, because it was really about that learning opportunity. And so with him pouring into me as an individual, it really inspired me to keep pouring into others. They call it the pay it forward, but it's that each one teach one mentality that I was originally introduced to when I was in college at Clark in Atlanta. And it's continued to inspire me throughout my entire career.
Wow. Wow. And it's so beautiful because it's so much part of our retail experience, which can be so self-taught. It can be so inspired by a person versus a brand. And how do you use that conversation? It's part of, while I certainly recognize and celebrate the fact that many people end up in retail by accident, I also think it's changing your mindset as you become successful. That this is very much about intention, and it is shifting this conversation from accidental to intentional, that I have an intentional career in the industry. I'm proud to work in retail, and you having a specific expertise within the ecosystem. I think it's also having language to use of of the power of that role. And I don't know if that resonates with you as you've had this 20+ year career in the industry.
Absolutely. Absolutely. To your point, I started in actual retail because I was a buyer for Bloomingdale's, and then I had relocated to Los Angeles, and I walked into a Zara store, and I actually started as a sales associate. So, which is typical. Most people don't, have a college education, go to corporate and then go into the store. But it was literally the best career decision I ever made, because it allowed me that real understanding of, we're all here as sales associates. We all have aspirations and dreams, and it's not just about collecting a check. It's very much about continuing to grow. That partnership, collaboration, learning from different cultures. From Zara, I had an opportunity to work with the whole team that came out of Spain. So that was a culture shock in the best possible way. And it really planted that seed that retail, there was a career in the actual stores, and not just in the corporate office, but there's a career in retail, and it's not just a job. Absolutely.
Beautiful. That's very intentional, for sure, for you. Well, let's, I'd love to shift topics kind of similar to that, and kind of talk about diversity and inclusion as it relates to visual merchandising, because there has certainly been some really incredible, I think, advances in things like mannequins and things like, how to have, access to inventory and product. And where has that shown up for you in the companies you've worked for, that you've been able to then create environments that feel discrete spaces where everyone is welcome and feels included?
I would love to actually shout out Forever 21 in this particular case, because before DE&I was even a phrase, it was at the forefront of their mind to start to buy mannequins that were of different shapes and body sizes. We even did tests with different skin tones in certain markets. And that was an awareness to me that the blank white slate really doesn't speak to everyone. And what does it look like to create mannequins or to have mannequins within shops that are different? Or even as you're putting together some of your t-shirts or your printed messages that incorporate phrases that are not just from one type of music, but that kind of speak to the genre, everything from rock to hip hop. I really do believe it's small things like that that really let customers know I'm welcome here. I'm wanted here. My dollars are respected here. I think that's huge. Everything, and it's not even just like an ethnicity thing, but the diversity and then inclusion definitely speaks to men and to women. So for example, at Forever 21, when they were launching the 21 Men concept, we were very much embedded with women and even with kids. What does it look like to communicate to men? We can't merchandise and have a whole bunch of women's clothes forefront and then expect men to kind of navigate through the entire store when we know traditionally most men don't traditionally like to shop. So what does it look like to even look at store planning, store design to create a separate entrance for men to allow them so they don't have to navigate through all of that. They can go straight to the men's department. So Forever 21, I believe, was at the very much the forefront of that, really challenging me to speak to how do you speak differently to men versus women versus kids. And then in my most recent job, my most recent position, it was awesome to be able to come into an organization that traditionally only spoke to men. What did it look like? And I was brought in to really help expand their portfolio as it spoke to the fixtures that they created, the store environment, including the messaging. We were only speaking originally to people who were very familiar in the hard surface flooring space. But in all actuality, through research, we know that women are making a lot of those decisions. And not to say that women aren't familiar with hard surface flooring, but some aren't. So what does it look like to expand that messaging? So it's a lot more general and a lot more inclusive and not nearly as intimidating, I think. And that's something that I'm incredibly proud of, that we were able to help turn that corner for the brand.
Yeah, and layering in there maybe more on the fashion space. We're also having important conversations about gender neutrality and non-binary, and how does that show up? So it's kind of gender represented, but non-gender represented at the same time. How do you create spaces where a customer that doesn't identify as male or female, where do they show up, and what is that experience? So there's, I think it's one of the many things I love about life and also about retail is that it's a constant conversation about how we evolve and how we do better and how we contribute differently than maybe we did before, or we learn and we grow, and then we show up differently. And I think that's so it's such an important part of retail, is that this evolution is every day. It evolves based on what's happening in the world. Yeah.
You can even see it on websites like for Sephora, for example, or in their stores where they're really speaking to that point of that neutrality, or those that consider themselves to be fluid. You can absolutely see the marketing starting to evolve and to change. And I love that inclusivity, because when you let someone through the door, it makes it feel as if everyone can come through the door. You know what I mean? The more different subgroups that you speak to, it automatically creates that feeling that, oh, they actually want everyone to show up as their authentic selves. I can come in with purple hair and eyeshadow and piercings everywhere and really feel welcome and included. So that makes all the difference. It really does.
Right. It really does, because it's also how we continue to evolve and develop the future workforce.
Yes.
Is that you actually can't be so binary about every decision. It is about including all, and visual merchandising plays into that conversation. Yes. Kind of showing up as your authentic self.
I would even challenge to say that visual merchandising is at the forefront of that, with marketing lock and step. Absolutely.
It's fascinating. And in your kind of corporate communication, when you think about those conversations about everyone being included and about the future of the store or feedback from the store, where have you felt where have you had the most success? Because this is a conversation often that happens because you're in stores, you hear it. I guess I'll speak for myself as a former head of stores for several brands. I always had a visual partner, most recently Monica Ziza, who has been this incredible talent as my great partner as I was leading the field at Intermix. who had this magic about her and her ability to take 200 brands and turn it into things that I'd never seen anyone else do before. And
Yes.
yet, so Monica was the first voice when the buying team, planning team, design team, anyone who wanted feedback, Monica was the voice of the field often, more even before I was. She was doing on the product side more than I was doing.
Yes.
And so where has that shown up for you? Because it's part of the frontline experience.
You know, it's interesting is as I was speaking about Amanda Featherstone and my experience at Forever 21, I really do feel oftentimes that it's the visual merchandising team, because that is that team that often is that cross section between the corporate office and what's happening in the stores. Mm-hmm. And in my opinion, visual merchandising at the highest level, if you, for example, being head of VM for the international market for Forever 21, I spent 90% of my time, not in the corporate office, but in the stores. I find that that is exactly where you have to go to understand truly what the needs of the external customer is, as well as really what the company as a whole should be doing next. That storefront team is really at the very forefront. They're getting the feedback from the customers, what's working, what's not working in real time. It's unfiltered oftentimes when it comes to when you go into the store and you ask the question, the sales associates oftentimes are more than willing to give you all the feedback. And I feel like, honestly, that's where it sits, is with VM serving as that conduit between all departments, capturing the information from what's happening out in the field and making sure that they bring it back to the corporate office. Brian Dodge, one of my professional mentors, he's currently with Floor & Decor. The thing that he told me, one of the very first things that he told me that was pivotal, that makes all the difference for any organization, is having that formal communication pipeline between the corporate office and the field. It's got to be a two-way street as opposed to just communication from corporate office to the field. It's got to be that two-way communication.
Yeah. And it's also teaching then often the ability to teaching others the ability to provide feedback in a business case based.
Yes.
Maybe there's some statistics behind it, a little less of, oh, I love this, I'm sure our customer would too. We've sold X amount of these in X amount of time, and we see this as a $500,000 business opportunity. Yes. That opens a buyer's eyes, a leader's eyes. It kind of takes some of the fluff and emotion out of it, and think again about it as a business and the importance of that conversation.
I think that's honestly one of the most important skills for senior visual leaders to learn, is to be able to take that information that can be anecdotal or a feeling, and what does it look like to translate that into KPIs, or to make a business case for it as you report up to your leaders, up to operators, because a lot of times it's got to come away from it feels, it looks, I think. It's got to be the facts really to make the compelling argument. Because unfortunately, sometimes things that are a bit more creative, like marketing or visual, it can be minimized to, oh my gosh, you made it look so pretty. And it does look great, but the point of making it look great is to increase sales. We made it look great, if you will, based on certain insights that we know this is working, this is not working. We want to demonstrate it or show it in a different way, position it within a different place within the store environment. That's genuinely at the core of what visual merchandising is. So yes, I totally agree.
So fun. I want to jump forward in our last few minutes together and kind of think about the future, and partnerships, because this, again, like a conversation about a career in visual merchandising, also includes outside learning, outside continued ongoing learning and development, partnerships. I know you've had a partnership there in Atlanta with the Retail Design Institute chapter, and I also had a partnership with them through Retail Pride, because pride in the store shows up, pride in your career shows up in visual merchandising. Yes. And I love those conversations. So tell us, number one, how do you think about the future of roles like this in retail? And number two, where do you get those outside resources and tools to be better every day?
Yeah, I'll start with the resources first, because I think that's really, it's so compelling, as you brought up RDI. For most of my career, I did not recognize the importance of really, as I call it, lifting your head up and not just focus just on the work, but really what does it look like to network amongst your peers? Most of my career, I was super focused on my team, on the work at hand, but the opportunity to look up, to connect with organizations such as RDI. I'm currently serving as the vice president for the Atlanta Southeast chapter, and it has been an absolute career game changer for me. And the reason why is because I've gained the opportunity to go to conferences, to meet with fellow retail experts, to hear different perspectives, to even lift up some ideas that I had that perhaps in my past companies weren't always well received, but the opportunity to talk it out and to understand, well, perhaps if you position it this way or think about it from this perspective, and then for me to be able to go back to my job to represent the ideas or to expound upon that idea has been, again, game changing and incredibly influential. It helped me honestly go from a director to a senior director in my most position because I was going to the conferences. I was asked to join boards, getting exposure to not only hard lines and soft lines, but everything from the hospitality industry as well, different perspectives. I think that is incredibly important for you to connect with your network throughout the industry. It's number one. Absolutely.
And before you move on, how can people get involved maybe with RDI or other organizations? Why don't you share that with everyone?
Absolutely. The Retail Design Institute, I'm making a plug. We are featured on LinkedIn. If you just type in the Retail Design Institute, I believe it's rdi.org is the website. You can go on, just type in a Retail Design Institute. There are chapters not only domestically, but internationally as well. You can always, please feel free to reach out to myself. I'm on LinkedIn, Adamika J. Owens. You mentioned that you are involved as well. So please do reach out. Everyone is incredibly welcoming and friendly. And again, I've learned so much about the entire industry of retail. I've gotten exposure to, interior designers and given me a different perspective on what it is that I do. I think that's amazing. It's really the game changer.
It is. And those conferences can make a huge difference. So I want everyone that watches this to not feel that they aren't for you, that they're all like some of these big conferences, and we've got NRF coming up and Shop Talk, and there are many more.
Yes.
And that everyone is welcome to learn. You may not have access to all of the events but the idea of learning and growing and all the kind of the ecosystem of the conferences and why they exist. I think when I discovered it, it unlocked a lot of things for me, and learning things that maybe I wasn't using in my current role, but I'm like, that's really interesting. I want to learn more because at some point in the future, I will likely use that. And that's the power of just building those relationships.
It is. And in the speakers that you hear from different industries, you never know where inspiration is going to come from. And so really allowing yourself to dive in. They always say that in anything you get what you put into it. And the moment that I stopped thinking of my career just as my job, but really opened my mind up to networking with my community, making sure that I was locked in step with my supplier partners, my career absolutely change, because then you really get to a place where you're thinking about strategy and not just about singular execution.
Yeah, that's intention. Again, you're thinking bigger than the heads down, just my job. Yes. I have intention about my career, and therefore I'm going to approach these conversations differently.
Absolutely.
And you've done that incredibly well. And we'll spend the last minute here, like where's Jaya of the future? Where are you learning about the future? Tell us your the next decade of your success. What's that going to look like?
Oh, interesting question. I am incredibly, one of the things that I think about is when I started in visual merchandising, it was truly considered to be visual merchandising. It was about moving clothes around. And where I sit today, and I'm super excited to see the evolution of the industry, is brand experience. It's customer experience. It's so much more. What is that I do, what I'm passionate about is so much bigger than that fixture creation, but it's about the entire store environment. It's about, as we always say, the omni-channel, that customer's journey. They're going to come to the website 3 or 4 times before they step into our store. Does our online experience and our in-store experience, do they match? Is it synergistic? Does the customer feel like it's an ongoing conversation, or do they feel like they have to start and stop every time? That's absolutely where I'm focused on, the brand experience. I am incredibly fortunate to have both hard surface and soft surface experience or soft goods experience. And I strongly believe that the soft goods is where I would like to continue to expand my career, what I'd like to continue to dive into. And I'm also now clear 100% that I must be in the stores. I must have that type of opportunity to really engage. Inspiring and being inspired by my fellow coworkers is truly at the heart of who I am, and really wanting people to see all that they have, their potential. So being in stores, doing brand experience for a global company is absolutely where I see myself.
Well, I have no doubt that everyone listening to here has fallen in love with you, just like I have. And those opportunities and to connect and just talk more,
Yes.
I would highly encourage everyone to reach out to you and build your network through Jaya and myself and anyone else that you'd like to speak to. It's just such a pleasure. So thank you. Thank you for sharing your story and your energy and your vibe and everything that you have done for all the people around you. It's just, you're such a joy. Thank you.
I have to thank you for this opportunity, because even having the conversation around visual merchandising and the importance that is that lock and step with store operations means everything to me. So thank you so much for this platform. This has been fantastic.
My pleasure. So thank you everyone for listening today, and keep learning, keep inspiring. The next episode of our podcast will be Friday, December 8th after Thanksgiving, right here on LinkedIn, and we'll announce that guest shortly. If you are on the hunt for communication, micro-learning, task management tools to guide your frontline teams into the future, check out what YOOBIC can do. We didn't speak about YOOBIC today, as we did last week, but there are incredible resources and tools that they have to offer. And we'll have that link in the comments. And have a great weekend, everyone. Happy Thanksgiving. And thank you again, Jaya.
Thank you. Bye, team.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.